Welcome to chapter 8 of the book of 1 Corinthians. Paul continues talking to the Corinthians about the things that concerning behavior in the church and behavior in the individual. And here begins in verse 1, and concerning the things sacrificed to idols. Corinthians were in Greece. Corinth was in Greece, and Greek mythology was the religion of the day, and also in Ephesus where Paul was writing this letter. So the people he's talking to here are probably many what they call Gentiles. I don't use the word Gentiles. King James did. I call it the nations because this is the ethnos, that we get ethnic from that. The nations, the people of the nations. And he says, we know that we have all knowledge. Gnosis. Gnosin is gnostic is a derivative. Knowledge inflates, but love builds. Agape, the agape love, instead of the erotic love. Eros or phileo, a friendly type of a love, but the godly type of a love. I was working at a fish processing plant years ago, and the young man had just started working there, and he had something on his shirt about Christ, and I mentioned about being a Christian, and right away he started saying, well, you do obey the Sabbath, you follow the Sabbath, and he kept, sticking on that, and I mentioned I was translating the Bible and so forth, and it was an attack against me. And after about 5 minutes, I said, all you've done is attacked me when you first met me. There's no love involved in you at all towards me. You didn't want to know my name, what I do, anything. It's just attacking about the Sabbath. And there's no love there. It says here, and Paul says, but love builds. It doesn't attack people. And I'm not signaling out people that go along with the Sabbath, obeying the Sabbath, but the attitude of this young man. But if anyone thinks to know anything, nothing yet he knows as necessary to know. We're always finding out about ourselves and when we deal with other people and attitudes, and we may think we know everything, but all of a sudden we're confronted with something from somebody, some way, and all of a sudden we have to decide how we're going to handle this thing. We may all think beforehand we know all the things, but I had this man I was working later in a hotel as a night auditor, and then one of the not a busboy, a valet, told me he was God, and he came over to my house and invited him over, and he was trying to talk me into that he was God, and so I had to deal with something there. I've never had anybody tell me that they were God before. So if we think we know everything, no, we don't. God has a lot, this human experience. God has a lot planned for us. But if anyone agapa ton theon, loves God, agape, this one is known by him. God knows the people that love him, and he considers us special. He protects us, and he pours his blessings on us, gives us the Holy Spirit, has his Son die for us so we don't have to suffer eternal separation and so forth, the love of God. But concerning the food then, now going back to the food, of the ones sacrificing to idols. So people were going to these temples where they were sacrificing to the idols, and we know that an idol is nothing in the world. Eidolon, idol is a transliteration into idol. In cosmo, the cosmos, that there is no other theos, God, except one, our God. We know that. Theos, theology is the derivative. For even if there are ones being called thei, gods, whether in urano, heaven, or epi, tis geis, upon the earth, as there are many gods and many lords, but to us there is one God, the Father. A lot of people, they say that, they believe in God, but what God do you believe in? That's the question. Same thing with the spirit. I've heard a man that was a spiritual quest, and he said he was spiritual. I said, well, what spirit? There's evil spirits, unclean spirits, all types of spirits. But to us there is one God, O Pater, and we have paternal, from that the Father, from out of whom are all things, and we in him. See, now it's interesting how he says this, from out of whom are all things, and we in him. So if that's all it said, then we know that we are of the Father, and there is one God, the Father, and one Lord, Jesus Christ. What does he say? Through whom are all things, and we through him. The same exact words. So I see here the divinity of Jesus Christ is being shown. He is the same relationship as the Father and the Son. The fullness of the Godhead, I don't know, how can we could never possibly understand it, see it. We may see certain things when we pass over to the other side, but understanding the fullness, there's no way we can. There's no way that this microphone that I'm talking into can relate to me. It doesn't know anything about who's talking into it. It doesn't know who I am. It doesn't know what I look like. It knows nothing. It's just a piece of iron and foam, a bunch of transistors in it. They were put together and designed by a man, but it doesn't know me. So how we don't know the fullness of God, but the Father is reflected through Jesus, because he says that. But knowledge is not in all. Now, the knowledge, the gnosis he's talking about are in the Christians. But some, in the conscience of the idol, either until just now, eat as of a thing sacrificed to idols, and their conscience being weak is tainted. So if they go somewhere and the people are other Christians are eating there at the place where this is happening, the person that is weak, it says, it's interesting how he uses their being weak, their conscience being weak, not the people, but is tainted because they are offended. And sort of with me, if I went to a bar around the corner of my house to watch the Oregon football game, had a beer, and another Christian seeing me do that could be highly offended because they don't believe we should be drinking any alcoholic beverages. I'm not going to get into that, but basically I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and Lutheran, went to a Lutheran grade school, Lutheran high school. My mother was a Lutheran, and the Lutherans drank beer. They were Germans, and the picnics, they had beer at the church picnic. And Lutheran high school where I had, they had, what do they call it, Jobs Day or Employment Day, something like that. And you would pick 3 places to go in St. Louis that they had open house, and they took students through their facility. And there was a bakery, and a May company had chocolate place where you make chocolates. And so, but the one place all the guys signed up for was Budweiser. We'd all go to the Budweiser factory. At the end of the Budweiser tour, they had a giant room with this giant ice bucket that was like 20 feet long, full of Budweiser beer. And if you were old enough to put your hand inside of there and grab the beer and open it up, you could drink it in those days. And so to me, drinking beer, and I don't get drunk. Drunkenness is not something that's terrible. But I'm not an alcoholic. But the whole reason I'm mentioning this is that somebody else could be highly offended, and I would know that. And if I thought that was the case, I wouldn't be drinking there. I wouldn't go there. But if I'm at home, I drink. If I want to do whatever I want to do, it's my business, and nobody really sees that. But then Paul went a little bit further, and he says, Vroma. We used to have bromo seltzer, like Alka-Seltzer, and came from Vroma, food. But food does not stand us before God. See, that's really interesting because nor if we do not eat do we lack. Now what he's talking about here, eating, is meat. It's an elision. The word meat is not there, but it's obvious because it talks later about herbs and vegetables. And so what we eat, right here, for neither if we eat do we abound, nor if we do not eat do we lack. It doesn't stand us before God, Paul says. So if you are following some type of the Judaic line of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and you think that by doing these things and not eating meat, that you're doing the right thing, Paul says right here, doesn't do anything, does not stand, food does not stand us before God. Very interesting. I think if you're doing that, you can take that and think about it a little bit. And nor if we do not eat meat do we lack. But take heed, lest perhaps this, your authority, becomes an occasion for stumbling. Like I was saying, it could cause my drinking a beer in a bar might cause somebody to stumble. So if that was the case, then I wouldn't go there. But actually, it was interesting in that an article was written about the Apostolic Bible translation in Newport, Oregon here. Little Christian paper comes out once a week. And it was a nice article. And I was hoping, well, maybe somebody will mention that they read this article. And all the Christians that I knew, nobody said anything. Nobody knew anything. When I went over to that little bar to have the beer, here, what do I look down on the table, and what's there? The Christian magazine. And two people in there said, oh, we read the article about you. So God works in mysterious ways, and we have no idea on how he's going to do these things. But that's a true story, and I was like, wow, nobody else mentioned it, but here I go to the bar, and they read the article. For if any should behold you, the one having knowledge, reclining in the temple of an idol, will not his conscience, being weak, being built up for eating the things sacrificed to idols? And the brother being weak shall perish over your knowledge. So if he's having somebody else having a problem with something we're doing, then let's back off. Basically, what Paul is saying: for whom Christ died, Christos, adelphos, brotherly love, adelphia, sovadelphia, asthenon. These are all the derivatives. Asthenia, weakness, and thus sinning against the brothers. And striking their conscience, which is weakened, you sin against Christ. So, if you think that because you have the freedom and you use the freedom, it causes somebody else a problem, then basically Paul's saying here that's a sin. You're sinning against Christ. So we have the freedom, but apparently Christ, from what Paul is saying, wants us to use this freedom wisely. Therefore, if a food causes my brother to stumble, scandalizi, scandal is the derivative, and it's a verb, the lizi on the end. In no way shall I eat meat. See here, now he's bringing up the meat. Into the aona, creosote comes from that, has to do with flesh and what they get from the animal, and aeona, eon, the transliteration. In no way shall I eat meats into the eon, that I should not cause my brother to stumble. I suppose I should go say, well, I'm not going to drink any beer to the eon if that causes anybody to stumble. Maybe I should, reading this, and just not drink the beer if anybody, but nobody's ever said anything. Well, you're a Bible translator, and here you're in here drinking beer. It's not happened. Maybe if that did happen, then I would take that into consideration, but it's the way it is with the Christians, that some are strong and some are weak, and this is what Paul is bringing out in the 8th chapter, and short chapter. In chapter 9 he changes from the behavior in the church, as we can see, to apostleship behavior towards others. And chapter 9, I Hope you'll join us, and God bless.